Hi, I'm Ann Terabini from LearnHowToQuilt.com. Today I'll be showing you how to put together this easy peace sign. But before we get started, I want to introduce you to Brenda from the YouTube channel Conquering Mount Scrapmore with Brenda. We're planning on having a sew date in the future, and I thought you might like to check out her channel. Here's a short video that she sent over.
Hello and welcome to Conquering Mount Scrapmore with Brenda. I'm Brenda and I'm here to tell you what my channel is all about on YouTube. We are here to empower quilters and have some fun and playing with our scraps and hopefully not creating a mountain like I've got of scraps. So the other thing that we're also here to do is to introduce you to other YouTubers. Now, there's a lot of wonderful, talented artisans on the quilting community here on YouTube, and I would love to introduce you to some of them. So, let me take this opportunity to welcome you to my channel, and then we can have a little bit of fun playing and then introducing you to other people. Okay? I hope you have a fabulous day ahead. Bye!
Thanks, Brenda. You'll find a link below to Brenda's YouTube channel, along with the link to the directions and patterns from today's video. One page lists the supplies and the directions. For the peace sign, you'll need to download 8 pages. Beginners will like how easy it is to choose fabric for this wall hanging. Just 2/3 of a yard for the peace sign and 1 yard for the background. I went with the blue and yellow for Ukraine and the crazy newsprint for the background, but any fabrics will do. You'll be appliquing with freezer paper, so you'll need to purchase a roll. You'll find this at the supermarket in the aluminum foil aisle. This pattern has 8 sections that get taped together to form a peace sign. To help you piece the pattern together, the sections are numbered with thin horizontal lines that will help keep everything lined up. I've sketched a few lines on this pattern to see what my background might look like, but it's not necessary. You'll need to trace this on freezer paper for your applique. If possible, tape down your pattern to the table so it won't move. This roll of freezer paper isn't wide enough to cover the pattern, so you need to cut 2 sections of this and then tape it together. Since this area eventually will get cut out, I'm taping over the peace sign. It's a good idea to also tape this to the table so it won't move while you're tracing. With the shiny side down and the flat side up, trace around that peace sign. After tracing, cut out the pattern. To get these inside sections, fold the paper a little, make a cut, and then follow that line. If you make a mistake and cut it a little short, don't worry, you can always take a scrap and just tape it in place. This pattern needs to be pressed to the wrong side of my fabric. It's much too big for my ironing board, so what I like to do is take a large beach towel, fold it in half, place your fabric right side down, and press. You want to make sure that you have all the wrinkles out. Place your peace sign on top with the shiny side down. Make sure it's lined up with the straight of grain or cross grain and press. You want to be careful around the tape. When everything's been pressed, then I like to turn it over and press from this side. Now you don't have to worry about the tape. If you want, you can touch it up again if you notice any sections not sticking. I like to start cutting on the outside edge, and I'll trim about 1/4 of an inch over, and that's going to be my seam allowance. After I've cut all the way around the outside edge, I'll come in and do these middle sections. And just like when we were cutting out the paper, and then come in and start cutting the inside. You want to make sure you cut 1/4 inch from the edge. Doesn't have to be perfect. As you can see over here, I got a little messy, but you need to have that seam allowance. When cutting, I try to keep this as flat as I can on the table. It's okay to move this around so you can get into different places, but try to keep it flat as you cut. There are a number of techniques that you can use to secure this edge down. Some folks like to take their iron and just press along the edge, but ironing is my kryptonite. I'm not very good at it, and so I don't prefer that method. Another technique is to use a washable glue stick. Put glue on that 1/4 inch seam, a little section at a time, and then turn it over. After appliquing, you'll have to get this piece wet in order to pull out the paper. You can also baste this seam down. Let's use large stitches around the edge. After you baste all the way around the outside edge, you'll want to baste the inside. Each one of these inside sections have 3 corners. You'll need to cut directly into the corner right up to the paper and then fold this down, either with pressing, with glue, or with basting by thread. You'll find more detailed instructions for each one of these methods in the links below. You can see where I've turned under all these seam allowances, except in this area. In a minute, I'll use this to show you a different applique technique. This freezer paper acts as a framework to keep those edges on your fabric true to the pattern. Center your peace sign over the background fabric that's been pressed and then pin in place. Start in the center and work your way out. After pinning the center, pin around the outside edge. And now you're ready to stitch. When appliquing, you'll want to first stitch these inside areas and then around the outside. I'll be appliquing by hand using a needle and thread, but you can use your machine to stitch around these edges, especially if you don't mind leaving the paper in. I'll be using this red thread so you can see, but you'll want to use a matching color. To get started, I'll roll up this outside edge, then I'll come up from the back right next to the peace sign, and I'm going to take a little bite out of the edge of that and pull it up. And then I'll go back down almost in the same spot where I came up. Then I'll scoot over about 1/8 of an inch, take another little bite, go back down. I'll continue stitching in this manner till I get to the corner. Even though I'm using red thread, you can barely see those stitches. When you get to these corners, you want to slow down and make your stitches a little bit closer, almost on top of each other, because this little corner can unravel. So you want to put a couple extra stitches in, keep it from unraveling. I'm putting them almost right on top of each other. Sometimes I'll take my needle and try to get that down. When you come out of the corner, you can go back to your regular length of stitches. I didn't baste this section because I want to show you another way of appliquing. To get started, I'll come up in the seam allowance here. Then I'll take my needle and turn that fabric under and hold that down with my thumb. I can go down and I'll scoot over. I'll scoot over just a little and stitch. I'll go down, scoot over a little, take a little bite out of that piece fabric and stitch. Go down, take a little bite out of the piece fabric and stitch. When I get to the end where I'm holding down fabric, I'll take my needle and turn a little bit more of that fabric under. This way I don't have to spend time basting. And I've got this nice paper that acts as a guide so I know where my pattern starts and ends. You can remove these basting stitches after you're finished appliquing around the inside edge. Before I applique this outside edge, sometimes I have to repin because shifting has occurred. But in this case, everything looks okay, so I can just finish appliquing along the edge here. I've finished appliquing all the way around the edge and I removed those basting stitches. Now the paper's still in here. You can leave that in if you're going to make this a wall hanging. Some people even leave it in if they're going to make it a quilt. But I'm going to show you how to take it out if you decide to do that. On the back of the quilt, you can see these stitching lines where I've appliqued. In between those stitching lines, the fabric, make a little slit in order to get your scissors in there, and then cut over to about 1/4 of an inch from that stitching line. Here's that stitching line, and I've about 1/4 of an inch over. So I've switched to these larger scissors to make it go a little bit faster. When you're cutting, make sure you don't get confused and cut one of these intersections out. There should always be paper underneath where you're cutting. If you notice little sections from your applique fabric, that's okay. That's just part of the seam allowance. So now I'm ready to pull out the pattern. Believe it or not, I can usually get about 2 uses out of this pattern if I hand baste it around the edge. You see, it'll just lift out. Now on this pattern, I did do some gluing. So let's see, here it is right here. And usually I would wet this, but since this is just a small amount, let's see if I can get this out. Oh, see, that came out pretty easy. Oh, here's another spot where, oh, let's see how fast this comes out. Oh, it's not glue, it's basting stitches that I forgot to take out. So that happens. Let's pull it out. And here's my completed top. Trim the edges to square up the quilt top. If you'd like to make the quilt larger, you can sew a number of these peace signs together or add borders around the peace sign. Either way, you're bound to make a statement with this project. Interested in doing more to promote world peace? Below you'll find some info on how you can help. Thanks for visiting learnhowtoquilt.com. Don't forget to stay tuned for the other videos in this series. You'll learn about a strip piecing technique that you can use for the background. You'll also get to explore some other methods for making the peace sign. If you get a chance, please like, subscribe, and share our YouTube channel with your friends. Thanks.